Comrades, we have taken a decision that we are going to remove the mayor of PE, who is a DA member and a leader. Why? Why not Mashaba? Why not Soli and all of that? Because the mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
Well, there's Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, saying that his issue is whiteness, and he sees it personified in Athol Trollip, and that's why he wanted him out as mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. So how did you feel? What is your reaction to that kind of statement?
Well, I think that's an expression of black privilege. The fact that if you are a representative of a black organization and you are black, you can make statements like that from a political platform and you will get applauded. And if imagine for one moment if I or some of the leaders of Afriforum said we have to cut the throat of blackness. I mean, that would be a horrible, disgusting thing to say, and we would be called to order for that, and we would be ridiculed all over the country.
Yeah.
But so there are clear double standards in the way in which the debate about racism is being
And Terry, what was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, very simply, I think Afriforum and the EFF are sort of Tweedledum and Tweedledee. They're both ethnic nationalists, and that's a terrible thing. The point of what Julius Malema said, and I mean 5 years ago I said here we have the emergence of our proto-fascism here. When people talk in terms of white and black, and this is Afriforum and the EFF, I don't talk in terms of that. I talk about people being exploited, I talk about working people, I talk about bosses, and I talk about workers, etc. I talk about the true nature of society, irrespective of how much melanin or lack of melanin there is in the individuals involved in whatever situation.
I think that claim would carry water, that would hold water if Afriforum were to start singing Dubula Amabantu and songs like that, which of course we would see as very atrocious. The EFF is an organization that repeatedly makes racist comments, propagates hatred, sings hate speech songs. Afriforum has neither done one of those. We haven't made a single racist comment since our inception. And it's ironic for Terry to say he doesn't talk about white and black. The reason why the three of us are having this conversation is because he wrote an article about white people and black people.
Let's take the discussion forward a little bit, because the white privilege topic comes about as a result of the, let's call it the legacy issue, where South Africa finds itself at the moment. That, you know, as we try to promote reconciliation in the country and build a socially cohesive nation, that the privileges need to be acknowledged, and the weaknesses, exclusion, shortcoming, poverty also needs to be addressed. And it leads me to the land question. I think it is the logic that's applied by a lot of people who are saying white people own all the land and therefore all the privileges of farming and holiday homes and all sorts of things, whilst the black community has to make do with shacks in informal settlements in the main. And that is the point of the heated debates that we see around racism.
Yes, I want to answer that, but I feel I need to take one step back and say I think there are two things that need to be considered here. The one is, which I believe is a very cancerous notion currently in South Africa, is the notion of cultural relativism, which implies, everyone believes this, it implies that if people are not equal, it can only be because the one group oppressed the other group. If, for example, person A and person B start companies, they have different strategies, the one company is more wealthy than the other one, it must mean that the wealthy one oppressed the one, or the more successful one oppressed the other one. There can be other reasons for inequality. So we cannot say there's inequality, therefore the group that has more should be blamed for inequality.
Come through, Terry, let me hear you.
This term, Here we go, cultural relativism. That's another one of the code words. You see, Afriforum and people like that have lost power, so therefore they're very cautious about being openly racist, as they were in the past, as their antecedents were.
How are we subtly racist?
I don't talk in terms, it's not a question of white and black, I'm talking in terms, and this is to do with the land as well. We have a perfectly good Bill of Rights, a fabulous Bill of Rights, in fact, which is egalitarian, which talks in terms of the citizens of this country. And Section 25 makes it quite plain that there should be expropriation of property. It could be with or without compensation on the basis of remedying past wrongs, as long as everything is just and equitable. So the point is that it's actually a non-argument. What we do have an argument with, and I would imagine it's coming out now in the land debate, is the fact that, it's the courtesy again of the legacy of apartheid, we have a situation where so-called Bantustan areas were given to so-called tribal chiefs, often who were created by the very apartheid regime, and who are running land and not giving title deeds or whatever, or allowing their people who live on the land to make decisions. Now that's a problem. We need to look at those problems as human beings, as equals, not as black and white, but we have to acknowledge at the same time that you're going to have those on the, I would regard the far right, pushing their anti-black in a very subtle way, and those on the anti-white side, or anti-Indian, for example. Where do we stop? We can talk about being anti-black, anti-white, anti-Indian.
Well, maybe you should explain why he's saying Afriforum is racist. Maybe you should give some examples.
It's ridiculous.
Yes,
but we have to be careful because our society has created conditions which allow that sort of thing to develop.
Okay, but Ernst, I mean, the whole point is that the story of white privilege is a legacy issue. What do we do now? You outlined some of the challenges that face the nation currently. What do you think needs to happen? Firstly, let me establish, is Afriforum committed to a reconciled one-nation South Africa that is non-racial?
Yes, it's even written in our charter, our civil rights charter, that we are committed to mutual recognition and respect and to peaceful coexistence here in the southern tip of Africa. The question, if the question is what should we do now, we should learn from what the rest of the world has been doing. And there are some marvelous case studies of success recipes and disastrous recipes. So the success recipes are countries that were in trouble and that are now flourishing, like China to an extent, South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong. We can look at all those countries, the Scandinavian countries, and then we can look at the disaster recipes, which are Zimbabwe and Venezuela and so forth.
But given our history, right, and the context in which we have this discussion, what do you do?
What we do, what we should do is we should firstly ensure that property rights is protected. Secondly, we should ensure that people get proper education, that the education system is fixed, that incapable ministers are fired, that people or school teachers or teachers who or principals who don't show up for school must be expelled. Those are the issues. That's the starting block. Secondly, we should stop blaming everything on other people. It could be true for a black person to have a problem that isn't the result of something a white person did. But it's very politically incorrect to even say a black person can have a problem that's not the result of a white person.
Well, let me go back to Terry then with the earlier question that, Terry, you accused Afriforum of being racist. What do you mean? Why do you regard them as a racist organization?
Because they talk in terms of white and black, and they talk about in terms of farmers, they talk in terms of white youth being discriminated against. The point is they are a group that supports, and they use this thing, cultural relativism or their culture, etc. They claim to be, they're the group that they come from, claims to be Christian and nationalist in that narrow way. And therefore, they obviously are not for people as a whole.
That's a very vague accusation.
Go to Oranje, I suppose.
Well, Ernst disagrees with you, but I did ask him a question earlier on. I said, this is South Africa that we live in, right, of different cultures and racial groups with the legacy of white privilege as it's seen, and new challenges that must be resolved, right, of inclusive economic participation and so forth. What do we do now, currently, Terry, to deal with these issues?
What we do now is, in the first place, recognize what the dangers are of ethnic nationalism, what the dangers are regarding corruption, etc. And we need to look perhaps at our entire electoral system, and we need to say we have failed. Over the past 20-odd years, the last 2 decades, we have absolutely failed. From 1996, when we had a very good Bill of Rights and Constitution, when the trade union group together put forward reasonable sort of macroeconomic policy. The government went off on a neoliberal tangent. Now, to talk about China doing well, or incidentally the Scandinavian countries are not, the world is in a mess at the moment, economically. And we have to understand that as well. We, however, in South Africa, because of the government's failings, have not done as well as we could have.
The thing is, the tensions are there. Just a brief response from you, Terry, and I want Ernst to also respond to this. The tensions along racial lines are there in South Africa. They may not affect the substantial, or they do affect a good number of people, and a lot of organizations are springing up dealing with this particular matter. What do we do then to bring about a reconciled, non-racial South Africa? Very brief comment.
These will be exacerbated, I think, if we allow people to go ahead on separate issues. I think we need to work towards saying we're all in this together, not employers or exploiters and exploited. Working people, whether employed or unemployed, the vast army of the unemployed as well, we have a common interest in trying to unite this country at that level. Sure. And trying to change radically, yes, radical economic and social transformation.
Well, Ernst, your response to my question, what do we do? This is where we are now.
Well, we need to break this entitlement ideology that according to which young black children are being taught by the government. I think it comes more from the government than from their parents, that everything that is wrong with you should be blamed on white people, or by politicians as well. Everything should be blamed on white people, and if you struggle, if you struggle to finish high school, if you struggle to get your degree, it's white people's fault. If that's the line of reasoning, we're never going to move forward as a country, and there's always going to be racism.
Well, we've got to find a way. I mean, you've got the organization, you could always help and say, according to Afriforum, this is how we see it happening.
Yes.
But
well, let me quickly respond to that. We firmly believe that dialogue is the best way to solve things. When we fight with government, or when we go to the United States, or when we go to court, it's always because dialogue has failed. So we must come to the table and we must talk. And when there's no room for discussion, then organizations like
Afriforum, if you can't come to the table, then you come to the couch.
Yes.
And then we explore this issue. And if we have to, we'll have a rematch, if you don't mind, so we can explore the issue further. Terry Bell, thank you very much for having been with us from Cape Town. Well, those are my guests, Terry Bell and Ernst Roets of Afriforum. Up next on the Modise Network, we'll be looking at football in South Africa with former Bafana Bafana defender Buckfish and football commentator Babam Tetwa.